Is Canada sacrificing its climate goals for economic gain? A recent deal between the federal government and Alberta suggests just that, and it's sparking a heated debate. Published on November 27, 2025, a Reuters report details how Canada is rolling back key climate regulations in an attempt to attract investment and boost its energy sector. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta's Premier have struck a deal that significantly alters the country's approach to environmental policy, particularly regarding the oil and gas industry. The core of the agreement involves the federal government scrapping a planned emissions cap on the oil and gas sector. Think of an emissions cap like a limit on how much pollution an industry can release. Dropping this cap could allow for increased oil and gas production, potentially leading to higher emissions overall. The deal also includes dropping rules related to clean electricity generation. In exchange, Alberta, Canada's leading oil-producing province, has committed to strengthening its industrial carbon pricing system. Carbon pricing essentially puts a cost on carbon emissions, incentivizing companies to reduce their carbon footprint. Alberta has also pledged support for a major carbon capture and storage (CCS) project. CCS technology captures carbon dioxide emissions from industrial sources and stores them underground, preventing them from entering the atmosphere. This project, dubbed Pathways Plus, is expected to be the world's largest, designed to capture emissions from Canada's oil sands. But here's where it gets controversial. Critics argue that relying on carbon capture alone isn't enough, and that it's essentially giving the oil and gas industry a free pass to continue polluting. Is this a genuine effort to reduce emissions, or just a way to greenwash the industry's image? What do you think? Prime Minister Carney's rationale is rooted in economic strategy. He's betting on the energy sector to help Canada navigate economic uncertainties arising from U.S. trade policies. He aims to diversify Canada's export markets, reducing its heavy reliance on the United States, which currently receives 90% of Canada's oil exports. Carney has eased some environmental restrictions put in place by his predecessor, Justin Trudeau, while simultaneously reaffirming Canada's commitment to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Net zero means that any carbon emissions are balanced by removing an equivalent amount of carbon from the atmosphere. Achieving this requires a combination of reducing emissions and actively removing carbon dioxide. The deal also opens the door to a potential new crude oil pipeline to British Columbia's northwest coast, with the goal of increasing exports to Asian markets. And this is the part most people miss. Pipeline companies and the Alberta government have long argued that significant regulatory changes are needed before a private company would invest in building a new pipeline. These changes include removing the federal emissions cap on the oil and gas sector and lifting the ban on oil tanker traffic off British Columbia's northern coast. The agreement includes a commitment from the federal government to adjust the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act to facilitate oil exports to Asia. This act currently restricts oil tanker traffic in certain areas of the British Columbia coast. However, this proposal faces strong opposition. British Columbia's Premier, David Eby, opposes a new pipeline through his province and believes the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act should remain in place. Furthermore, a coalition of Indigenous groups in British Columbia has vowed to block any oil tankers on the northwest coast, declaring that the pipeline project will never happen. This raises serious questions about the project's feasibility and potential social and environmental impacts. Currently, the Trans Mountain Pipeline, owned by the Canadian government, is the only direct route for shipping Canadian oil to Asian markets. A recent expansion tripled its capacity, costing 34 billion Canadian dollars, $24.2 billion. In addition to carbon pricing and CCS, the federal government and Alberta have agreed to cooperate on building and operating nuclear power plants. They will also work to strengthen Alberta's electricity grid to support AI data centres and build transmission lines to neighbouring provinces. This could lead to a more diversified and reliable energy supply for the region. The key takeaways: Canada is making significant concessions on climate regulations to stimulate investment in its energy sector. This decision is driven by economic considerations, particularly the desire to diversify export markets and mitigate economic uncertainty. However, it faces strong opposition from environmental groups, Indigenous communities, and political leaders who are concerned about the potential environmental and social consequences. This situation begs the question: can Canada truly balance its economic goals with its commitment to climate action? Is this a necessary compromise, or a dangerous step backward in the fight against climate change? What are the long-term implications of prioritizing short-term economic gains over environmental sustainability? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.